And we are live. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is Hey Rockstar. I am your host, Josafat Emiliano, and today we have a familiar face. He was with us about a month ago. I'm putting my phone on silent because, all right, there we go. He was live with us about a month ago when we did that amazing panel that we did on a snow day. We all got snowed in, and it just turned into such a great time. But I wanted to bring him back because this man has depth. This man has gone through the ringer, and there's value in his life lessons. And we're just going to have a conversation today. Is that fair? Is that fair? Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Scott Kinman. What's up?
Hey, thanks for having me back, Hosa.
All right, here we go.
Last time, and I've been looking forward to this.
No, the pleasure is all mine, my man. So seriously, last time we talked about a lot of different things. Actually, I'll save the shades to the end. Last time we had Alex. We had Alex with us, and then later on we had Kraler, who also when I went back to re-listen to everything, there was a lot of gems from everyone's conversation that I'm like I missed out because I was trying to broadcast at the same time. But no shame. I mean, it is what it is. We do what we can do. So last time you really didn't get to share that much about yourself. So Scott, if you wouldn't mind, just tell us a little bit about your story of just your rock stardom. You know, what is it that you consider yourself a rock star in, and where you're at today, if you don't mind sharing.
Cool. All right. So whole life story consolidated.
Your Batman origin story.
Batman origin story. I grew up in a small town in Southern California, a little town called Lake Arrowhead. It was 5,500 feet up in the mountains, lakeside community in the middle of an ocean of city otherwise. My dad was a fine art and architectural woodcarver and semi-professional musician. And my elder siblings were a good bit older than me, 12 and 14 years respectively. So there were times that it felt kind of only childish. And then on top of that, I was homeschooled all the way through. So got a little bit of a different experience of the world from an early age. Starting pretty early on in life, I had a very keen interest in science and the natural world. I used to stay up until like 2 a.m. Mind you, I'm like under 10 years old. I'm a kid. I'd stay up till like 2 a.m. reading science books under my covers with a flashlight and trying to hide it from my mom.
I read comic books. Well, I guess that's kind of the same.
Yeah.
Science fiction.
I got into reading a lot more fiction later on. But anyways, that was me early on. I just loved learning things, loved discovering things. I always had a huge appreciation for art. That's one of the things I'm really grateful to my dad for, is that growing up in the creative household that I did, I was exposed to everything. And one of the things that my dad drove home was taking influence from all fields. So I learned about painting and sculpture and music and psychology and marketing and all of that just from his approach to his art form and having to sell himself as a provider for the family. But I really didn't believe that I had the capability to be artistically creative. Since I was 4 years old, had shaking in my hands. Doctors, they offered a few different drugs to help manage it, but they were chemicals that I wasn't comfortable with the side effects of, so I opted not to take those. But anyways, fast forward a little bit, in my teens became obsessed with art. I would spend hours a day looking at art online. I fell in with a group of creative friends that were all way better artists than I was. And I got really frustrated because I had this burning passion in me, but my drawings looked like a 6-year-old drew them. So I basically just started bashing my head against the wall. I started drawing a lot, started taking pictures a lot, trying to find a way that worked for me. And over the course of time, I started to develop my own style, and found my voice in it. And I realized that it wasn't so much that I couldn't do it, it was just that I couldn't do it the way that I had seen other people do it.
Mm.
Um, and when I started to get breakthrough in that, um, I just became more and more hungry for it. So I spent a lot of time doing my own research, not in a collegiate setting, not in schools, but doing my own research, reading books, reading things online, listening to interviews with other experts in creative fields, trying to learn everything that I could about artistry, so that I could further unlock my own creativity. It was a grind all the way, hard all the way. But eventually started diversifying into multiple disciplines. So at this point, I've done photography, illustration, abstract painting, dabbled in poetry, not a whole lot, and worked a bit on music. Music is my current primary creative focus. But what I discovered was that, I guess the key lesson was that something that I once believed was beyond my reach and that I was never fated to be able to do became my reality. And that has hugely influenced the way that I look at the world and the way that I approach my life. Um, I see possibilities beyond what are prescribed by the culture, and that's not what I fight for. That's what I seek to live after. Um,
That's powerful.
yeah.
That is powerful. And I'm just, again, ladies and gentlemen, this is a conversation today, or just this new career job that I have,
Mhm.
working with students, and a lot of them are very tied into, or they tie their identity in their grade, and they just want to know how they can keep their grade up, how to bring it up. That's the driving factor for them to whether they perform or they don't perform is, will my grades still be good? And I remember one student in particular, and a lot of it has to do with their culture. There's Latinos, there's typical, or I mean, I don't want to say typical, just like American kids, because they're all American kids in my, but you know what I mean. There's other ethnicities that are blended in this culture, just of Middle Eastern and African and even a few European and Isbanian peninsula, and there's just such a fluctuating or just just a bunch of different cultures.
Yeah.
But a
Incredible
lot of them,
diversity.
yeah, a lot of them have a lot of their family ties is they have that same. If mom and dad, they want to make sure you're making a grade, and I get it. It's respect to that. That's the standard that they have. But what I'm starting to see is a lot of students who don't make the grade or aren't making the grade there, they feel like they have their own limitations. They start calling themselves names and they're thinking, I'll never amount to that because I can never be a straight A student. And what they're saying, at least the way I do things, is I pay attention to what they bring to the table. I pay attention to what they contribute as far as participation. I give everyone the equal opportunity to write, equal opportunity to express, to speak, to practice. I give them a safe place to try it out. Because I even told them, I'm just going to assume the majority of you speak more than two languages, and neither of those two languages were first Spanish. And they were like, yeah, so I'm up to three. Like, yeah, Spanish would be my fourth language. Like, cool. It's selfish of me to assume that this is the most important language. I just want you to know that I'm going to give you the tools that you can try it out. Have fun with it. experiment, see how far you can get, and just giving that freedom and not identifying by that. And actually, I'm thinking about doing a talk on this in itself. One student in particular, when he's like talking about the grades, I looked at him like, you know what's one of the most important lessons I learned in school from one of my professors? He goes, "What's that, Mr. Emiliano?" And like, listen, what is a grade? And he goes, well, and like, it's simply my opinion of who I think you are. He's like, huh? Because if you think about it, I set the standard, I set the test, I set the things, and I'm testing you by disabilities. So the results you give me, that's only an opinion because you are going by my rules. You're working by my game. So that's how I can identify you. However, this is not who you truly are. And the school is set up for ways that just because you didn't pass the standardized exam, there are other ways that you can bring your grade up and get that grade up by showing other things, doing extra work, doing extra creative processes, and defining yourself in this. And so basically what I was telling them, like, honestly, once I learned that the grade, and I told them at the end of my semester, that same professor he challenged me, he threw stuff at me. And the very last exam, the final exam, it was a hard one, mostly essay. But the very last question he asked was, given the results, given the work that you brought to my class, what grade do you think you deserve in my course? And I knew about this question. I knew this question was coming because my friend who took it last year, he's like, yeah, dude, he had that question. I said, I want an A, and he gave me an A. And he goes, dude, I didn't do anything. And the temptation in me, I told my student, was I wanted to put an A, but I had to stop and think and self-search and said to myself, Josafat, did you really bring an A to this game, to this class? Like, no, I kind of rode it because it was easy for me, the speaking part of it. But I said, I was honest with him, like, I want to give myself an A, but I know that I didn't bring all I could have brought, but I know that I at least did a B plus, and he gave me a B plus. He gave me the grade that I thought I deserved because I defined myself by that. I defined myself by the work I brought, and that's what I told him. Just because these limitations or whatever the standard is here, that doesn't mean that's where you have to be. The truth is, you can decide where you want to be by what you bring, what you put in, what you apply. Now, for some of us, it's a grind. It's a work. Some people, they are like, what's the word? They're proteges, and they just have it. They just seem to get it. I have this one student, I don't know how he does it. He comes to class, he's hardly pay attention, he's never there, or like he's always distracted. He doesn't do any of the work, but when it comes to the exams, he's acing. He's got like, he's like, and he doesn't even speak the Spanish. I mean, he has read it out loud, and so he can at least has an understanding. And this is just a typical kid who didn't grow up speaking Spanish, but it's just testing is easy for him, I guess. And he just is a protege when it comes to making exams. And other teachers have told me, he goes, it's the weirdest thing. He's like, he doesn't apply. He doesn't do the work. You think he's messing around and not getting it done. Because even when I'm talking and teaching, he's just like looking everywhere. He's everywhere. But when it comes to the actual test, he's getting A's.
Yep.
And he's not cheating because I'm watching the whole time. Yep. I honestly don't know how you could cheat in my class because most of it.
That's funny. That was me actually. So I was homeschooled, yes, but most of the time it was through other school systems. So I still had testing. And I always struggled a lot with doing the work, doing the homework, because I found it boring and meaningless and mostly irrelevant to me and the things that I cared about. And just the monotony of it was unbearable. But I did always test very well. I was very good at taking tests. Interesting skill to have. But yeah, I love that I love the idea of not basing somebody's sense of worth or ability upon the metrics of test scores. And I think that is hugely important. I have been recently doing some research into IQ and IQ tests. because I've set a goal for myself, which is that I want to qualify for Mensa. Um,
That always made me laugh.
yeah.
When I first heard about Mensah, I thought it was a joke because the word Mensah reminds me of the word menso in Spanish, which means dummy. Like menso, you're a dummy,
Yeah.
you're an idiot, and so when I saw Mensa, like, why it was a group who are supposed to be the smartest people calling
Yeah.
themselves dummies.
Yeah.
But anyway,
That's funny because I think genius is often paired with idiocy of some sort. If you know people that are exceptionally brilliant in one area, they often tend to have very noticeable deficits in other areas.
yeah,
But anyways, I decided that I wanted to qualify for Mensa mostly because I really wanted to stretch myself. I do test as having a high IQ. Um, and I think that Mensa would be a difficult goal to attain, but I think that really dedicating myself, I think that I can get there. But that's not the point of it. The reason that I bring that up is as I've done research on IQ, um, what has been the key takeaway from that research is that IQ is not fixed. If it's something that you want to grow, you can grow it. But B, that IQ is a very narrow metric. It tests for a specific type of thinking and a specific ability to rationalize. It doesn't test your emotional intelligence. It doesn't test how well you relate to people. It doesn't test how hard you're willing to work, how hard you're willing to push yourself, or your resilience against failure. And it it doesn't test character either. And honestly, if we're looking at the whole cohesive image of everything that it takes to be a healthy human being, all of those things, in my opinion, matter more. Being able to listen to people and empathize with them, understand their perspective, and relate to them, even if you yourself have different perspectives or are different. Being able to get knocked down over and over and over and over again and keep getting up. These are the things that take you far in life. Because the flashiest skill or gift that you might have will only take you as far as a season of extreme hardship. Ooh. And seasons of extreme hardship come to everybody eventually. So it's the skills that get you through those seasons of hardship that get you through life.
That was a gold drop right there, my man. It is true, because I've constantly run into, let's just say, youngins, non-seasoned youngins, who the very first response to any kind of situation is they assume they know the answer with an arrogance to try to fix the problem that's around them, instead of, first of all, standing back, saying, no, I learned a while back that it's not my job to fix everyone. I need to understand, learn. If they seek help, then I can help. But like, you can lead a sorry, this is so off point. I just thought about a meme. You can lead a donkey to water, but you can't make him get in. You can't make him get into the river with a naked man. There's a meme of this naked man in the river, and the donkey didn't want to get in. But anyway, deal is, there's just some, and I just say bless their hearts, but I've seen that, and they still have a lot of maturing to do, because they have such an arrogance in their, in not wisdom, but in their smarts, in
Mm-hmm.
their book smarts, and they see themselves as these smart people, or high. They think they're high IQ, but when it comes to the world's problems, they kind of become cold and say, "Well, you just need to do this. You just need
Mm-hmm.
to do this, and that'll fix it. And you don't have to worry about it." And I get it, because I'm not the one. Also, because I'm also on the other spectrum. I'm also not a big fan of diving into emotionalism,
Mm-hmm.
100%. Like, I don't need to feel it. I do. I understand. I can empathize. I can see where you're at, but your emotional state does not president and does not demand that I change. Been What is it? What is it? You're there's a fancy way to saying, but it's not supposed to be my urgency. Just because you are in an emotional state doesn't mean that I have needed to be urgent in bending over towards that. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But basically, what I'm trying to say is, but as we gotten older, as we've learned what it's like to do the suck. We've learned what it's like to be in lack, to be in pain, to be in the part where we're asking God the why, God, why, and but not in the point where we're like demanding that He change. It's just we just like it's the situation, and we know that we're not going to offend God, but we've learned to grow in that, so that whenever. But I'll say all that. I know I'm just kind of talking and rambling, but basically what I'm trying to say is, because I've gone through the pain, I've gone through all that stuff, that now when I see someone else, I know quickly that it's not always the healthiest to try to fix them.
Mm.
Sometimes the pain is what they need to level up, I guess. It's that whole metaphor of the butterfly
Mm-hmm.
in the chrysalis. Is that what it's called? Whatever
Yeah.
the little.
Yeah. They enter into the chrysalis or cocoon if it's a moth, and their whole body liquefies, and then it's restructured as they grow into the moth or butterfly.
But someone was saying that at one point they tried to help the butterfly out of the chrysalis, and
Mm-hmm.
because they made it easy for them, it never developed the strength in its wings. And when it came out, it just fell down and died.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it needs to. It's that process of struggle that it
Yep.
learns to strengthen the blood goes to its wings, or whatever they have. Yeah, moth
Mm-hmm.
blood, or and that's what gives it strength. So when they finally break through, find their own breakthrough, their own way through this hardship, then they're strong enough to fly high to wherever they need to go and continue on. And okay, I'm not sure why I felt like let's go here, but let's go here today. Given where we're at, and hopefully we don't get in trouble for this, do you feel like today's generation has been, although some would say they have it harder than us because of all they have access to, but at the same time, it's made so easy for them? Do you think that the lack of that struggle is making, I don't want to say weaker generation, but a generation that doesn't know how to make it through those hard times, dark times? Just an
Hmm.
observation.
Mm-hmm. Um,
I could be totally wrong. Uh-oh.
I would. My take on it is that there is a degree to which that is true. That in being protected from hardship, people have grown soft, in a manner of speaking. And if you look at just a biological function, if your immune system is never challenged, it grows weak.
Mm.
And then if it's suddenly challenged by something, that something might overtake you. So, contrary to what you would expect, um, you are more likely to have greater health over an extended period of time if you are continually and regularly exposed to small threats. We don't want to go into the realm of threats that are so big that they'll take you down.
Yeah.
But by encountering challenges that you can overcome, it does make you stronger, and it does make you better able to handle bigger and bigger challenges down the line. Um, I do think that there is also something to be said for that. While the current generation have some things really easy, there are other aspects that we have it much more difficult than generations that came before us.
Mm-hmm.
So I think every generation is going to have problems that they have to overcome. Um, and I think that that's an important thing to recognize, that we're never going to reach a state of utopia where people don't have problems to overcome. And if we did, that would be terrible, because they would become weak, but also I think people would lose a sense of purpose. And
Yeah.
in struggle, in working and fighting to overcome, there is satisfaction and meaning and purpose.
That's exactly, well, before the show, I was sharing with Scott about a call I had with a friend earlier or yesterday, and we hit on that topic about purpose. He couldn't sense his purpose in all that he was doing. He was just getting frustration. But let's keep this kind of on in task, Scott. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I'm the one who took it somewhere else, but I like
No,
that you brought that up, that struggle and overcoming and becoming a better version, or coming out stronger, different, not as soft. I love it. Is as you know, as a speaker, well, I'm not sure if you knew this, but as a speaker, I like to encourage my audience to detach, first of all, from failure, because I'm all about identity, and your failure does not identify you. I teach that you are not a failure. The plan you simply used failed you. You're not broken. It's the system that you're currently using that's broken. Detach from that, your identity. And once your identity is detached from that, then you're free to take ownership of your own life, take the reins again. And it's by changing your mindset that you can start reprogramming and figuring out what works for you, and start towards a new life, or a new version of you that is more towards what you're created to do, rather than what you were told you had to do. But anyway, in your own walk, I'm sure you've had some letdowns. I'm sure you've had some failures that maybe at the time seemed like, am I ever going to get out of this? And you probably went through that season. Are there any that come to mind that you don't mind sharing? That today, I had to say that because I don't want to pry. Just anything you can, like, yeah, this was some heavy shit. But I see now the benefit of who I am, that I'm a better version today. I didn't see it at the time, but I see it today. Is there anything that comes to mind that you don't mind sharing of a failure, and how you were able to, what you found to help you overcome that, if you even have? Maybe it's something you're still working on.
Give me just a second on that one.
No worries. This message is brought to you by, just kidding.
Yeah. There's a lot of examples of that. And really, I might say that that has been just kind of a picture of my life thus far. I have been through hardships that I never thought that I would. I, for the majority of my adult life, have dealt with numerous health challenges that doctors have confirmed but not been able to explain. But I think what I want to cycle back to is, we were talking about pride in perspective, and pride in your own solutions that you believe will solve things.
Okay.
That is a big part of my story, is that I would consider myself to have certain gifts intellectually. I've been very good, always very good at reasoning things and seeing multiple perspectives. And there was a point in my 20s, earlier 20s, where I had grown extremely confident in this. And I had grown confident in my vision and my approach to manifesting my vision, to the exclusion of traditional wisdom, and to the point where I was not sufficiently contemplating the perspectives of the people around me. I figured that they just didn't understand, they didn't get it, but I had insight into these things. And some of the insights I had were valid, but I came into a season shortly after I moved to Nashville at the end of 2015, where it was a perfect storm season for me.
I remember some of those moments.
Yeah, you saw me in some pretty low places, but the short version of it is that I came here to Nashville. I did not expect to make it immediately. That was not even part of the vision. I came here expecting to grow a lot. But I got here. I was overconfident in my own ability to make decisions. I became isolated, was not sufficiently listening to the people around me. Then, in addition to this, I encountered some hardships that were my fault, but I also encountered a number of hardships that were beyond my ability to control. Weren't my fault. They happened to me. Those through this season, which was actually a several year period, I lost everything that I used to identify myself. I lost my physical health very significantly. I lost housing. There was a long period where I was living on couches. I never had to sleep in my car, thank God. But I was dependent on other people's generosity to help support me. I, along with the loss of physical health and the loss of other foundations in my life, my mental health crumbled. Anxiety and depression became completely overwhelming. And basically through cascading events of terrible things happening to me, and then me responding to those in ways that were not ultimately to my benefit, I ended up totally broken down with basically nothing. No money, very little support, very little strength within myself. And I didn't see a way out. I didn't have a way out beyond hoping for a miracle. And the way that I got out of that was by stopping listening to myself and listening very intently to the people around me, and doing my best to navigate life that way. And that really, it pulled me out of a very deep hole. But after a season of that, I began to realize that there were deficits in that as well, because I could not rely entirely on other people to lead my life and to make the decisions that I needed to make. So after a season of relying entirely on that, I rediscovered my own voice, rediscovered listening to my heart, my inner conviction, and rediscovered my ability to reason through things and make decisions for myself. And where I'm at now, while I still have challenges, I still have been dealing with some health difficulties, which affect everything in life. I am currently doing probably the best I've ever been, because I've learned. I say learned, but I think it's a lifelong process
Yeah.
of continually growing in it.
Yeah.
But I've learned the integration of listening to my own voice and my own heart, but also listening to people around me, and learning to discern faulty thinking within myself, and learning to discern faulty thinking in the people around me. So it might have been a long-winded way
No.
of answering, but there you go.
No, I like that. That's actually, thinking about my own journey, I'm kind of like your opposite in that retrospect, in that respect, because growing up, apparently, I was all about me. I knew me, but somewhere I heard words, I heard messages from others, or I just got the message that I shouldn't be so up and I shouldn't think so highly about myself. And eventually that started my dependency on others for approval. And that became the story of my life for many, many years, even when ministry, when I was doing a lot of good, but it was all always in seeking the approval of those who were around me and such, and seeking those praises. And I remember one time joking around saying, whenever people would like say something nice of whatever I did, either I spoke something nice or I sang something nice, and I would do the over religious thing, like, no, brother and sister, don't thank me, thank God who gives the gifts, gives the talents. But deep down inside, I was hungry for some kind of acknowledgement, for something that would prove that I was value, because of that. And it took a lot of this many, many years, and it wasn't until I finally hit burnout, had to come back from the field, and I had to get away from all that, which led me here to Nashville, led me to my season of rest, where I told Pastor Henry, I don't want to get involved in church volunteer right now. And I did. I rested. It was in those alone times where I had to do a lot of healing, and also just begin to trust in and learn. And today, it's like you, it's a different process, like where instead of depending on other people's voices for me to find approval, I had to once again believe in myself that I am created fully. I do know what I need. And now you've seen me, especially in public now, it comes like not arrogance. It's more like a playful. What's the one thing when I meet someone for the first time, as I'm looking away, I say, you know what? It was so good to meet me. And, everyone laughs at that, or like, or someone who meets me, like, they're like, hey, it was great meeting you. And you've heard me say this, like, I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. It was great meeting me. Yeah. And I say it in a confidence tone, not in an arrogance tone, in a confidence tone, because I've learned to appreciate and listen to myself. And I don't need to wait for someone else to say, good job, Josafat, because I did my best, and I am proud of what I've done. Low key. Yeah. I think I listen to my podcast more than anyone else, because I go back and listen to all the things. I'm not like arrogant or anything, but I'm not like I'm the best voice. It's just I go back like, whoo, that was some good stuff too. Where'd that come from? I surprised myself. But no, that was me. I had to learn to listen to me, and not wait for others to tell me yes.
Yeah, that's great. That is something that I am growing in. That has been a process for me, because while I had been very prideful in some areas, I've also faced radical insecurity in my life. And ultimately, I think those are two sides of the same coin. Pride and insecurity are they're the same thing. They're a valuing of yourself based on your comparison to outside metrics. And what those metrics are determines whether you feel overly inflated or underinflated. But I think that true humility, which most people tend to relate with having a low sense of self. I think true humility lies more in the range of not comparing yourself and knowing that you have value to offer other people, and that's real, and also that other people have value to offer you, and just being willing to accept that and manage your life and live with character to the best of your ability, and just accept that it's a process.
That is wisdom. That is true stuff right there. Accept the process. It's gonna happen. You have to go through it. And where was it? I think it's James, where it talks about where one of the apostles was talking about how they enjoy the chance they get to go through the suffering, because in it they see how strong their faith has become to be able to endure the process. They've seen how far you've already come. When you're tested, when you're tried, that's when you learn, oh, I actually know this, or I don't know this, that situation. All right, so I want to go back to what I talked about eventually when I wanted to originally. This whole conversation was supposed to be about this, but I'm glad that we went where we went.
Yeah.
But in the last talk, you brought up something that that most of us kind of we understood it, but at the same time maybe we don't practice it. But I have a saying, and I've shared this before, and my saying is, when the get to becomes a have to, then at least for me it becomes a I don't want to. And so me saying that is basically I hit a point where my artistry, my music, or whatever I do creatively, when it becomes a job that I depend on to pay the bills, then I no longer take pleasure in doing that. That's just me. That's just my way of thinking. However, don't get me wrong. If you want to pay me $1 billion for me to sing you a song, I will sing you the song and I'll take you $1 billion. I'm also not scared to sell out in that aspect. But I know that a lot of people, their dream is to eventually become let their art be their paycheck, let their art be what pays the bills, and let it be something they're known for and become. But you brought something to the table, how you saw it differently, and if you can kindly remind us how you said it, because I was trying to reword it, but I did you know justice on how you see that it's actually a good thing for a artist who is a creative and others to have a typical work job that exposes us, or it forces us to be around normal people. Do you remember how you said it though? Or we can just reinvent the wheel tonight.
I doubt that I would get it verbatim, so I'll just try to speak out of the principle of it.
I like that.
Just go with it from there. But the core of it is, as you said, recognizing the value in having work outside of your artistry. And you can look at that from a lot of different angles and see a lot of pros and some cons. But I think at its core, where I'm wanting to go with this is saying that your art should never be your business. Never. And what I mean by that,
bold words,
is that when you make your art your business, you have to submit it to what is valued and esteemed by other people and the masses. And there's a heavy temptation to be inauthentic in your work for the sake of meeting the approval of others. And a great deal of what business is just strategies for meeting the approval or the valuation of others. Now, what I think is a good idea is to practice both art and business. And this is coming out completely different than the way I described it in the last podcast. But when you practice art and business, you've got two different ways that you can do that. You can either practice your art in one branch and then have a career on the outside that allows you to be your own patron for your art and support your artistry that way. And there's a great deal of value in that, which is what I had been talking about in the last podcast. Because when you have work, when you have business outside of your art, you are developing skills that are relevant to your art. No matter what you're doing business-wise, you are learning organizational skills, you're learning relational skills, you're learning time and resource management skills. As long as you're actively investing in this work, you are learning those skills. And all of those skills are relevant to all artistic mediums. So you're getting paid to get better. You're getting paid to level up, which is something that I said in the last one.
Level up.
And then there's the other side of it, is that you could also build a business around your art, which I would say, for myself, I found value in making the distinction between building a business around your art versus trying to build your art into a business. Building a business around your art, you already know what your art is. You know what's true, what's authentic, what is meaningful to you, and then if you choose to build a business around that, you can start looking at how to relate that core of authentic artistry to other people and find ways to serve other people and meet other people's needs with that. And you can learn about marketing. You can learn about all of the different components of business, and apply that to the support of your artistry. But personally, the approach that I'm taking is I'm going for working in other businesses outside of my art form to hone my skills, build my skills up in those areas, working on my art forms by myself to cultivate skill in that area. And then if I someday decide to branch into building business around my art, I will have already cultivated the business skills through working day jobs. And I believe that approach will grant me greater stability. It will mean less nights living on ramen. And most importantly, it means that I don't have to sacrifice the integrity of my art.
I like that, because the same thing that I shared last time is find something that you're good at but not necessarily passionate about that people will pay you for.
Yep.
And build that, work that to make the money. And then once you have the bills paid and the money's coming in from that, then you can, whatever your passion is, you can do that and be a bonus. If you can sell it, if you can build a business around it, that'd be amazing. Or you could use your first skill to help fund that project. That way, if you're not making money, it doesn't kill you. It's it's a relief. It's an outlet that you can of expression that you need.
Yep.
Because we're all like rivers. You've heard that famous saying, there's two rivers in Israel. One's the Jordan and the other one is, or actually there's two lakes in Israel. One is the Galilee and the other one is the Dead Sea. Two seas, the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea. But the Sea of Galilee, it takes but also has an exit. It takes and gives. So there's so much life around the Sea of Galilee. Whereas the Dead Sea is only taking, never releases, never lets go, and eventually just stagnates, and there's nothing can live in there because it's just constant taking in, but there's no relief in your life. And so as a creative, as a business person, you need to find a way to an outlet to let your creativity out, or else you will be depressed, or you will be like, I need to do something.
Yeah.
But anyway, but no, that's also the approach that I'm taking right now with this. Because as a speaker, it's also an outlet where I can communicate and practice and hone my skill as a communicator.
Yep.
Not just with my fellow peers, but also with the students that I'm speaking with. I remember one time, I kind of just mentioned something to my student, like, have you guys ever heard of me give a motivational speech? Have you heard about my motivational speeches? And then one of my students, like, every day, Mr. Emiliano, because you always give us something outside of the classwork that inspires us. It's in the nature. I throw them a quote, I throw them something, pump them up. But yeah, it's in me, so I get to practice and throw it in there. But the cool thing about where I'm at, we have, without getting too deep, they have like circles for the teachers to talk to each other, to express to each other, and we have different ones. And yesterday I went to one they called infinity circles, and it's a smaller niche, and it's one of I get to pick, and I picked creatives. There's only like a handful of us, but there's in this school of educators, there's a pool of us who are also creating. There's some screenwriters, there's some filmmakers, there's some of course musicians and such, and we just get together and we share our creative outlets with each other to inspire. To some want critique, some want some encouragement, or just they want to hear feedback on them creating, because they're creating but they have no place to post it or throw it, and they just share it amongst themselves. And it's actually a pretty neat little thing. I thought it was gonna be a little more no, I thought it was gonna, I don't know what I thought it was gonna be, but I enjoyed it, and I'm actually starting to share some of my talks with them, some of my stories I've been sharing with them, and they're like, "Ooh, we like that." Kind of situation, and honing my craft as a speaker. But most definitely, I think last time you also mentioned something about when you're around people, working with people, being around regular people, you get to know your audience. You get to know, for lack of a better word, your future clientele, your future customers.
Yeah, I think there's a huge degree to the importance of that. I did just a few minutes ago, I was talking about really knowing your authenticity of your art, knowing what you do, knowing what's meaningful to you. But there are two sides to that. If you can find the Venn diagram overlay of what's meaningful to you and what's meaningful to other people, that gives you a huge leg up. If you're abandoning what's meaningful to you for the sake of what's meaningful to other people, you can't sustain it. And the irony of it is that it stops being meaningful to other people because it's not honest. But if you're only doing what's meaningful to you and you're living in a bubble, your audience is probably going to be a lot smaller because it's not relevant to them.
Yeah.
And when you're proactively engaging in relationships, and work is a great forum for that, with people that are from spheres outside of what's most familiar to you, that gives you an opportunity to develop fluency in relating to different types of people. And that fluency works through any communication medium that you have before you, whether it be poetry or painting or taking pictures or motivational speaking. I very much believe that there is an important ability that humans have been gifted with, which is the ability to abstract principles from things. One data set, if you have a conversation with one person who's radically different from you, you learn not just about that person, but you learn how to relate to people that are different from you. And that applies everywhere across the board.
So true. So true. What has helped me become a better educator is the fact that for many years, growing up in churches, being a youth worker, youth leader, I mean, I started at their age and just kind of grew with them, and I've heard their stories. I felt their pain. I know it. So I'm relatable, and I show up, and I actually show up not with like, there's the temptation to come off as condescending because I am the adult and you're just the kid. And I get it. We need to set those boundaries, because also there's another one on another perspective or retrospective, or what is it called? We're going with two faces. On the other side of the coin, there's the over friendly, I'm your best friend teacher. And the student's like, this is too cringe. Why are you trying to be like me? Why are you trying to be young like me? You can't. And I showed up and I talked to him like adults, not adults, but I talked to them normal. I don't talk down on them. And I said, but I also know when the things are hard, I'm saying, look, I know this is difficult, and that's why I'm here to slow down and help you guys out. But also I'd had to be tough and say, if I noticed that if you don't want to move forward, I can't force you, and I'm not here to force you to. I'll give you all the chances you want, but that having to learn balance too, because that goes into boundaries, setting boundaries with certain people. What boundaries that you will cross and you won't cross. Well, not cross, but like how you work with people, and what kind of people you want to work with, and the only way I've gotten to learn that is by throwing myself and being exposed to the people. But anyway, I don't know where I was going with that. I understand what you're saying, and I honestly don't know what's up ahead in the future, but I do know that like you, I'm a student of life, a student of the hard knocks, and I'm also accepting the fact that I can do it. I can throw myself into this situation. What's that term that you've heard? And we need to end this shortly because you got something else coming up. But have you heard of the term of okay, never mind. Let's not go with it because I can't think of the word off the top of my head. Okay. But it's whenever you attempt something and you kind of ask yourself, what if people see me that I feel like you're a fraud, like you don't deserve to be in that position. Syndrome. That's the word, imposter syndrome. I don't know why I was going with that one, but like sometimes in a lot of areas, imposter syndrome is a temptation for me as a creative, I guess, in general, and anything that I do, anything I try out. But then I remember one of my favorite quotes from a book that I read once. I read a book once, by Amanda Palmer, The Art of Asking. And the quote is, the difference between professionals and amateurs. Amateurs try their hardest to make it look like they're not winging it, whereas professionals, we know we're going to wing it.
Yeah.
And that kind of helps me whenever I feel imposter syndrome. I'm like, that's okay. I know I'm going to wing it.
Yeah.
And we knock it out of the park most of the time. I'm impressed.
Yeah. I really like that. And to be honest, most of the best things that I've ever done, my greatest successes have been doing something that I had not carefully planned out and structured my approach, but jumped into it and had to improvise as I went. Most of the best pieces of art that I've made, I made them without a plan. I started making something and the vision came to me as I was working on it. Great conversations come from jumping into the conversation and just engaging and seeing where it goes. If you try to force a conversation, it just gets awkward and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's great. And
well, speaking of great awkward conversations, that's good. Scott Kinman, I don't want to keep you any longer because
Yeah.
we just hit the 59-minute mark, and that's okay.
Mhm.
We got a lot of value
Yeah.
today. Can't wait to go back and edit this. And
Mhm.
I probably won't take out much. I usually never take anything out. But
Mhm.
Dan, on the high note, is there anything? I like to ask everyone this: if you want to be found, how can people find you, or what are you? Yeah, yeah. That's the question. If you want to be found on the internet, how can people find you?
All right. So I have a relatively small footprint on the internet. I've really minimized my relationship with social media, um, and I suspect that I will re-implement it at some point in my future. But I've found that for right now, it has removing that distraction and removing the noise of it. There's so many highly charged opinions on there. Most of the time, it just
Mm,
comes through as noise and stress.
yeah.
So mostly cutting that out of my life has been tremendously beneficial personally, but I still have it. Um, so you can find me on Instagram at spectral bonsai. Um, that was a project that I built up, focusing on gaming and art and live streaming on Twitch. For now, I have put that project on the shelf while I reevaluate my approach and what value it holds for my future. But that's still my primary social media. You can also find me on Facebook, Scott Kinman, but I almost never use Facebook. I deleted it from my phone. I'm
I,
mostly better off without it.
Mostly I use Facebook to promote this thing,
Yeah,
and if anything makes it to it's probably like something you pull off my Instagram because I'm
yeah,
more Instagram than anything these days. And even contacting people, I give them rather give them my Instagram than my phone number because it's easier to
yeah,
contact just to me message.
yeah. Before we close out,
Yeah,
there's one thing that I've kind of had on my mind leading up to this conversation that I wanted to talk briefly about,
let's do it.
which is going willingly making decisions to put yourself in situations where you are way out of your depth, and how fast that will grow you. Um, and for myself, that is a tool that I have utilized almost as a necessity,
Mm.
because I grew up very fearful, very uncomfortable dealing with people when I was in my teens. I didn't even like going in and talking to gas station attendants.
Wow.
Um, and I realized pretty quickly that everything that I wanted out of life was outside of my comfort zone. And so I went hard into going as far outside of my comfort zone as I could. I joined a band before I could play an instrument.
Could have fooled me.
Yeah, yeah. I learned to play by joining the band. Um, and when I got to Nashville, one of the things that I used to do was I would go to open mics, sign up, and then decide that I was going to write the song that I was going to perform while I was there waiting to be called up.
No
So
way.
I would sign up, I'd sit down, and I would just write lyrics and try to come up with a song and try to imagine chord progressions that would work with it, and then go up and sing it on the spot for the first time. And like, granted, I bombed hard sometimes.
Wow. No,
But
that's impressive. This is the first I hear this story. Like,
yeah,
wow.
yeah, I used to do that. I used to busk, play music on the street, and sometimes I would make a connection with somebody and try to improvise a song on the spot for them. And like, yes, I bombed hard a lot, and failed a lot. But sometimes the magic would happen and I would do something that was really cool that completely surprised me and was beyond what I thought I was capable of. And in the process, I gained a lot of experience. And it really helped me in expanding my comfort zone and developing that ability to go do things that are scary and hard. Um, and I think that that is one of the best skills that you can develop.
I 100% agree that what's the saying? The opposite of fear is not being brave. The opposite of fear is doing what is right in the presence of fear, or something like that. I probably missed it up, but anyway, that's you remind me of one of my guests that I had a few months ago, Mark from Dallas, and he talked about how he overcame his fear of snakes by going to little step by step, but just confronting his all the way to the point where he actually owned a bald head bald head python.
Yeah.
He owned one of those and such. And I was like, man, and other things like even his fear of public speaking. He's like, I'm scared to talk, so he joined. He went and he just started auditioning for movies and forced himself to be in front of people. It's an amazing story.
That's awesome.
But no, that I never knew that about you, and that is definitely a skill that I can do it. I can man up and take, like, I see something and I'll do it, but there's still certain things I'm like, I never would have. I had never thought about attempting going to open mic night and write a song and make it up as we go up there. But you know what? There is a lot to be said about a person who can do that. They must have some kind of other IQ. There's a book that I recommend called I heard about it. I actually need to download it. It's probably gonna be my next buy on audiobook. It's called The Curse of the High IQ by a man named Aaron Clary. It's apparently why you realize why certain people frustrate you, because your IQ is just higher than theirs, amongst other things. But other than that, thank you once again, Scott, for being on today's show. We're going to close this out and get ready for what you got to go do. But this, ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 64 of Hey Rockstar. Today was a conversation with a rock star, with our special rock star, Scott Kinman, also known as Spectral Bonsai, the man with a deep voice. When it comes to his videos, too bad you guys haven't seen if he ever brings back the Twitch, I recommend you get a chance to just watch this man play and converse. It was some good times. It helped me through a lot of my long traveling times. But other than that, any final words before I shut this show down, Scott?
Yeah, let me be concise. You talked about doing things in the face of fear. Something that I believe to be true is, I think fear is the shadow of love. And anything that you love is going to have a fear attached to it. And just like a shadow, that fear is going to be a distorted image. And you can either look on that shadow and live in fear, or you can find the thing that it's attached to. You can find that genuine love and focus on that love. And it might be a wrestling, it might be hard, and you might have to practice it over a period of time to gradually shift your focus from the fear to the love. But I think that's essential. That's the only way forward. There's so much fear in our society right now. There's so much fear in the world. And the fear is not going to go away by magically solving all of the problems. The problems are going to be solved by people focusing on the love and working towards that in spite of the fear.
Wow. No more words. That's the best way to end the show. That's you saved it to the end. That's some good stuff. That could be another topic for another day. Yeah. So, all the way from Nashville, Tennessee, I'm Josafat Emiliano. This is Scott Kinman. And Miguel. Oh, Miguel's in the other room. Didn't bring him out this time. But ladies and gentlemen, we just want to say thank you for joining us today. Thank you for letting us into your heart, into your homes. Thank you for letting us into your cars. Thank you for letting us into your hearts. So until next time, much love and many blessings.